Part 76. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 752. The warrior's intuition is very sharp. When dealing with the plaster-like furnace, Carloman 16 suddenly raised his head. The machine gun bullets were like raindrops, the rockets dragged the tail flame like meteors, and the bombs were thrown in the air like boulders. In the sky full of alchemist weapons, Carloman 16 suddenly felt frightened. A giant bomb broke through the clouds, stirring up a small circle of ripples on the surface below the clouds. When he saw the giant air blast bomb, Carloman 16 shifted his target, turned sideways on his horse, and faced the falling air blast bomb. In his hand was the knight's gun that the servant had just handed over, and the conical knight's gun was shining with white light. At this moment, Rudolph found that he was not locked, and Carloman 16 actually left him and aimed at other places. He followed Carloman 16's line of sight and saw the familiar giant bomb. The giant air blast bomb with a diameter of 1 meter and a length of more than 9 meters was thrown into the battlefield. The knight's lance rushed out with a whistling sound, and almost hit the giant air blast bomb in the next moment. The giant air blast bomb was 800 meters away from the ground, and the core explosion zone of the giant air blast bomb had a radius of 500 meters. Carloman 16's lance was very timely, preventing the core explosion zone of the giant air blast bomb from covering the knights below. The horrible explosion exploded in the sky between the Blue Lion Knights and the Unicorn Knights. Although it was not directly swallowed by the core explosion zone, the powerful shockwave tore apart all the objects it encountered. The limbs and head of the warhorse were directly smashed, and the weak knights were even broken in half. The heavy helmet, which was not firmly connected to the body, became the knight's death talisman. When the shockwave passed, the helmet was separated from the body, and the powerful impact left only a horrible broken neck on the body. Duke Stewart of the Unicorn and Duke Wilf of the Blue Lion raised their shields at the last moment. The ultimate strength gave the shields an 8-level protection, but the problem was that the shields provided too small a protection area and could only protect a small number of knights behind the two dukes. The Golden Anchor Cavalry Division, which had just been put into the battlefield, stopped in the shockwave that swept across the battlefield. Caleb and Kedrick stopped their horses behind their father, Marquis of the Golden Anchor, Palu, and looked at everything in front of them in horror. Is this the battlefield with the alchemist? They have been at sea and have never participated in large-scale land battles. They did not expect that the alchemist was so powerful on the front battlefield that he could cause such great damage to the knights. Hercules. Hercules is gone. Kedrick has been paying attention to Mr. Furnace. He immediately discovered that in the chaos of the battlefield, the Hercules, who was hundreds of meters tall, disappeared. And Marquis Palu's sight fell on His Majesty the King. The furnace, which disappeared at some point, suddenly appeared in front of Carloman 16. Carloman 16 was wearing thick armor, which could provide him with protection equivalent to level 9. There was a long peephole on his helmet, which became the only weakness of the full-body armor. The finger of the furnace was pointing at the peephole. The combination of two level 8 forbidden techniques, Taurus forbidden technique pulverized world, and Archer forbidden technique shooting finger fire, shot the extremely concentrated forbidden flame into the peephole of the helmet. A scream suddenly sounded in the helmet. Carloman 16 was successfully attacked by the furnace at the moment when he was distracted to attack the giant air blast bomb. In such a battle, you can't be distracted for a moment. Blood spilled from the peephole and stained the metal outside the peephole, making the silver metal sticky red. Carloman 16 swung the knight's sword and cut the furnace into 2 pieces. Before his death, Rudolph regretfully discovered that Carloman 16's body was very strong. His archery finger fire only blew up Carloman 16's left eyeball and failed to penetrate. It would take at least 3 such attacks to penetrate Carloman 16's head. Amid the exclamations of the court attendants, their king staggered on his horse, obviously seriously injured. After the furnace died, it was resurrected on a burning corpse without a second's interval. The charred corpse, the blazing flames, and the furnace that walked out of the flames summoned Hercules again. The Hercules, 100 meters high, wielded an olive club and smashed it hard at Carloman 16. Joel saw the counter-attack of Duke Stewart and Duke Wilf in the telescope. Most of the clouds were broken, and the two dukes found the flagship floating on the clouds. Two night guns flew up to the clouds, trying to shoot down the flagship on the clouds. If L ignored the flagship airship, it was at a very high position and there were green skulls on it, so it should not be shot down. He stared at the Royal Holy Grail Knights and ordered, "Fire!" At some point, an 8th-level alchemical cannon left the defense line and was pushed forward. The soldier pulled the ignition cord, and the 8th-level giant air blast bomb was fired from the thick muzzle. This place is only a few kilometers away from the hillside. In a few seconds, the giant air blast bomb will explode in the Royal Holy Grail Knights. The Knights and Alchemists have been fighting in the Vulture Mountains for 3 years, and neither can do anything to the other. The advantage of the Knights is mobility, and they can quickly escape after a charge. The advantage of the Alchemists is the powerful frontal fire power. 200 years ago, the Knights were no match for the Alchemists. With the improvement of the Alchemists' weapons, the Knights' disadvantages are even greater. For example, now, if the strongest Knight Carloman 16 is delayed, the remaining Knights will only become targets of alchemical weapons. Carloman 16 has no other choice. He has to withstand the attack of the Olive Club and turn sideways to deal with the giant air blast bomb. The air blast bomb was detonated by the Knight's gun hundreds of meters away from the Holy Grail Knights, and the hillside was once again lit up like the sun. Carloman 16 was alert. This time, he would never be attacked by the furnace again. However, he saw a scene that made him tear his eyes. Hercules retreated instead of advancing, and escaped from the explosion range of the giant air blast bomb. In front of Hercules, a bronze chariot suddenly appeared. It is said that this is a chariot blessed by Athena in ancient mythology. The 4 horses of the chariot are all covered with thick armor, which protects the front of the horses tightly. Hercules is hundreds of meters tall, and Hercules' chariot is as huge as a mountain. In the reflection of the Vulture Mountains, the soldiers looked up at the bronze chariot as if they were looking up at the cliffs of a mountain. Before the aftermath of the explosion ended, Hercules' bronze chariot rushed towards the Holy Grail Knights. At this moment, it was impossible to tell whether Carloman 16 was more like a knight or the furnace was more like a knight. The bronze chariot rushed into the Holy Grail Knights. The chariot was 200 meters wide, and all the knights crushed by the chariot were smashed into powder. The shock wave of the giant air blast bomb cleared the way and cleared the low-level knights. The bronze chariot followed and swept the high-level knights. When Carloman 16's knight's gun arrived late and smashed Hercules, the situation was already very ugly. This round of attack alone caused more than 3,000 casualties in the Royal Holy Grail Knights. Blood gushed out of Carloman 16's helmet again, and the wound that had just healed burst open. These knights were all descendants of nobles, and they died on the battlefield just like that. Furnace! Furnace! I'm going to kill you! After resurrecting, Rudolph found that a quarter of his star power was gone, and the negative effects of rebirth from the fire came. But his goal was achieved. He stared at Carloman 16 not far away, and the olive tree club of Hercules pointed at Carloman 16, provoking the king. Rudolph wanted to be promoted, and he had to be promoted under heavy pressure. Carloman 16 in front of him didn't even make him feel the opportunity for promotion. He had to make Carloman even more angry to get the chance to be promoted to the throne of the Celestial King. Rudolph had only one way to survive, that was to hold on, otherwise he would die in the revenge of the Pillar of Creation in a few days. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 753. The second flagship airship takes off. The second giant air blast bomb is loaded. Joel's face was full of urgency. After the fourth resurrection of the furnace, the Hercules was obviously weak, more transparent, and more sluggish. We must help the furnace to survive the weak period, cause greater casualties to the knights, and buy time for the furnace. He turned his head and shouted, "Check all the air blast bombs for the last time, and fire all the air blast bombs tonight." Some officers thought that tonight was just a tentative attack, but they didn't expect the commander-in-chief to treat tonight as a decisive battle and to fire all 6 giant air blast bombs in one night. Not only that, Joel also issued a new order. Move the artillery position forward. Launch a general attack. Establish a temporary front 3 kilometers forward. Joel looked at the wolf girl standing next to the level 8 alchemical artillery. The furnace side has invested everything, and even the wolf girl is standing on the front line. According to the pre-war deployment, if the war is not going well, the furnace will not be resurrected for the 4th time, because after the 4th resurrection, the furnace will become weak. If the battle goes smoothly after the evaluation of the furnace, and the victory can be expanded tonight, then the Constitutional Army will invest everything to turn this tentative night attack into a final battle. The furnace was resurrected for the 4th time, and he proved his will with his actions. Don't worry about the weakness of Hercules. The resurrection of the furnace is reincarnation. After being weak several times, he will be resurrected to the peak state. In the center of the battlefield, Hercules fought with Carloman 16 again. Hercules became weak, but Carloman 16 also became weak. His knights were killed and injured too much, resulting in less extreme power for him. An airship was shot down and fell beside Hercules. The size comparison between the airship and Hercules was like a bird falling beside a person. The ammunition in the airship exploded, blowing the airship to pieces. There are many airships shot down like this. Even if the bombs in the airship do not explode, they will be swarmed by the knights after landing. The battle between Hercules and Carloman entered the most intense state. Hercules was blown up again and again, and reappeared again and again. Carloman 16 occasionally seized the opportunity to kill Rudolph on Hercules' head. The 5th time, the 6th time. Rudolph resurrected without interval and appeared on Hercules' head again. He used uninterrupted resurrection to hold back the king of East Elba. Just when Rudolph was resurrected for the 7th time, Hercules became weak again, leaving only a more transparent shadow. At this time, the level 8 alchemical artillery loaded the 2nd giant air blast bomb. It takes 20 minutes to load the artillery that fires giant air blast bombs. After the loading is completed, the giant air blast bomb rushed out of the muzzle. The huge shells made Carloman 16's scalp numb, and the target of this shell was still the Royal Holy Grail Knights behind him. Alchemists and knights are old rivals, and they know where the knights' weaknesses are. Carloman 16's reaction was not slow. At the moment when the giant air blast bomb was launched, he had already prepared the javelin and threw it fiercely to the side. The javelin will collide with the giant air blast bomb in the air, detonating the air blast bomb in advance. The giant air blast bomb exploded hundreds of meters away from the Holy Grail Knights. This time it was closer to the Holy Grail Knights, and the core explosion area engulfed hundreds of meters of knights. The terrifying effective killing zone almost covered half of the Holy Grail Knights. At least 4,000 knights were affected by the explosion, and died, injured and fell off their horses. Carloman 16 was filled with hatred. If the furnace had not held him back here, he would have led the Royal Holy Grail Knights to overthrow the headquarters of the Constitutional Army in one fell swoop. How could the Constitutional Army so calmly fire one giant air blast bomb after another? In the camp, the deputy commander of the Holy Grail Knights, Marquis Nicta, closed his eyes in pain, and then rushed out of the camp with the last 3,000 reserve knights and rushed towards His Majesty the King. The King's knights suffered too much loss and must be replenished as soon as possible. The attack of the Constitutional Army was so explosive that the morale of the knights did not have time to collapse. Just when Marquis Nikita left the camp, he was horrified to find that at some point, another giant air blast bomb fell from the night sky. What is the Constitutional Army doing? Are they going to knock down all the giant air blast bombs in one battle? Marquis Nikita threw out his javelin. As a level 7 knight, his javelin can also detonate the level 8 giant air blast bomb in advance. His reaction ability is not as good as that of His Majesty the King. When his javelin hit the giant air blast bomb, the giant air blast bomb was only 300 meters away from the ground. A strong explosion exploded above the heads of the reserve knights, and the flames instantly engulfed the entire camp. Nikita was horrified to find that the flames of the explosion engulfed the knights behind him. The ultimate power was on Nikita. He was in front of the knight team, causing the knights behind to fall into the sea of fire instantly. After the explosion, Marquis Nikita got up from the ground and climbed onto his horse again. Of the 3,000 knights in the Royal Holy Grail Knights Reserve, only 500 were still capable of fighting. At this moment, all the knights got the answer they had wanted to know since childhood. Why were the knights defeated by the alchemists? Why did the noble knights lose to those factory owners? The cold reality gave them the answer. If they could not quickly penetrate the Constitutional Army's position, and if the Constitutional Army spread its firepower, the alchemist weapons that were ahead of their time would quickly tear all the knights apart. In the jokes of the alchemists, knights are all idiots who use cold weapons. In the face of such firepower, war horses, armor, and shields are all as fragile as straw. Carloman 16 attacked angrily and killed the furnace that was holding him back again. This should have been Rudolph's 8th resurrection, but Rudolph did not look weak after resurrection. He did not resurrect in the flames, but in the air and on the clouds. He returned to the node in the past, and was what he looked like before the battle. The bronze chariot rushed down the clouds with the Hercules, who was hundreds of meters tall, and was tough all over, no longer weak. Peak, returning to the past brought Rudolph back to the peak. Hercules was already huge like a giant demon, and the bronze chariot was even bigger, which made everyone on the battlefield look at him sideways. This scene was forever engraved in the minds of the noble knights and became their nightmare. The turbulent clouds, four-winged Pegasus, a huge bronze chariot, Hercules on the chariot. The idol of all knights in ancient mythology launched a straight downward attack on the knights on the ground. The ripples of the clouds were like the smoke and dust stirred up by the hooves of Pegasus, and the long hair of Hercules fluttered, burning with the flames of the ancient fire god. Rudolph stood on the head of Hercules, overlooking the Royal Holy Grail Knights. Carloman 16, with only more than 4,000 knights left, was weak and the offensive and defensive positions changed. The chains behind Hercules rushed into the void, sending the star power of 3 constellations into Rudolph's body continuously. Just rush down like this. Joel in the distance shouted, "Fire!" The second level 8 giant cannon fired the 5th giant air blast bomb. The air blast bomb will open the way for the furnace and create a greater advantage for the furnace. Carloman 16 knew that he had to defeat Hercules in one fell swoop to boost morale, but he had to divide his energy to block the giant airburst bomb from the side in advance. The explosion of the airburst bomb illuminated the hillside as if it were daytime. After blocking the airburst bomb, Carloman 16's momentum did not decrease but increased, and he actually launched a second attack at this time. All the knights behind him stagnated, and His Majesty the King's extraction reached the maximum. In the explosion light that illuminated the entire battlefield, Carloman 16's knight threw a spear and shot at Hercules with a whistle. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 754. The four-winged horses of the bronze chariot were covered with thick armor. The horses stood up one by one as if frightened by the knight's javelin, and the armor of the horses cracked inch by inch in front of the knight's javelin. The two horses in the middle were even defeated by the residual power of the javelin, and broke into fragments of starlight. Behind the horses and in front of the chariot, there stood a bronze shield to protect the driver, and the shield and the knight's javelin collided with each other. The blow filled with the anger of Carloman XVI was so powerful that the bronze shield also broke into dots of starlight after resisting for a moment. However, Carloman XVI in the helmet showed uneasiness in his one eye. How could this attack of a level 9 apostle be blocked by a starlight bronze shield for a moment? In every attack before, the Hercules was defeated at the touch of a button. A bad premonition surged in Carloman XVI's heart. Hercules was undergoing some strange changes and seemed to be stronger than before. After breaking the bronze shield of the bronze chariot, the knight's javelin hit the shield given by the god of fire. After being stimulated by the powerful impact, fierce golden flames emerged from the shield decorated with ivory. The jet of flames completely enveloped the bronze chariot and Hercules, and the appearance inside could not be seen. Hercules completely turned into a handful of flames, the flames from the ancient god of fire, protecting Hercules and fighting against Hercules' enemies. Carloman XVI looked at the scene in front of him in horror. The knight's javelin failed to defeat Hercules. Surrounded by flames, Rudolph's face was exposed with blue veins, blood was running in his blood vessels, and he even heard the beating of blood vessels on his temples. The strong pressure hit his body, making his body seem to fall apart. The three chains behind Hercules vibrated wildly, making a fierce chain collision sound. At this moment, the star power in his body reached its peak, but it was not enough. He heard the sound of the Vulcan shield breaking. Rudolph reached his limit, reached the limit of this body, reached the limit of Hercules, and also reached the limit of Lacerda, Coma Berenices, and Sagitta. The knight's spear broke through the Vulcan shield, and in the vision filled with flames, the knight's spear rushed straight towards Rudolph. Hercules' hands arrived just in time, slapped hard, and tightly grasped the knight's spear. The tip of the spear was only half a meter away from Rudolph. The shock wave brought by the knight's spear directly tore Rudolph's flesh and blood, and he had more than a dozen deep wounds on his body. Rudolph was like a broken porcelain, and his flesh and blood groaned. However, this blow also broke the shackles that restricted Rudolph. After reaching the limit, the fourth chain flew out from behind Rudolph. Immortal King. The King of the Starry Sky. All constellations must crawl at the feet of the Immortal King. The newly appeared fourth chain flew to the sixth level midheaven constellation, Sextans. Then the fifth chain flew to the midheaven Hydra. The two midheaven constellations accommodated by Rudolph also provide star power for Rudolph. The midheaven constellation is not the limit, and the vibration of the starry sky continues. The sixth chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Carina. The seventh chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Carina. The eighth chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Compass. The ninth chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Vela. The 10th chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Southern Cross. The 11th chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Hydra. The 12th chain. Flying to the southern sky, the constellation of the Phoenix. The more critical one is the 13th chain. The 13th chain instead shot towards the North Pole, shot towards the northernmost starry sky, and flew to the 8th level circumpolar constellation, Cepheus. Spanning the four star regions of the south sky, the central sky, the north sky, and the arched pole, spanning the entire starry sky, there are constellations in each region that provide star power for Rudolph. These chains left the body of the Hercules, spreading hundreds of meters into the starry sky, and then disappeared into the void, connecting to different constellations in the void. The 13 chains made the Hercules seem to have more dazzling wings. The chains sent more star power, making the figure of the Hercules more majestic. In the myth, the Hercules killed the king of Mingyur and burned down the king's palace. In the starry sky tonight, under the protection of the stars, the Hercules wore the crown, broke through the limit, and became the immortal king. From the South Pole to the North Pole, across the entire starry sky, those constellations that surrendered to him all provided him with star power. Rudolph's star power was surging all over his body, and he became the most special arched pole wizard, and he became an 8th level arched pole Cepheus wizard. A golden crown suddenly appeared on the statue of Hercules. Rudolph stood on the head of Hercules, so the crown appeared right between Rudolph and the knight's javelin. In front of the golden crown of Cepheus, the knight's javelin could no longer move forward. Not only that, but the knight's javelin instantly shattered. The attack power equivalent to level 9 could not break the crown. Cepheus is not a simple level 8 arch wizard. With the support of the constellations in the sky, Cepheus, like Hercules, can also burst out with strength beyond its level. The majestic star power poured into Hercules, and golden flames were ejected from the golden breastplate and the Vulcan shield. These flames changed rapidly, condensing into entities in the flames, allowing Hercules to wear dazzling golden full-body armor. Golden hand guards, arm armor, elbow guards, shoulder armor, group armor, leg armor, knee armor, greaves, and foot armor. Ancient armor style, with very few decorations and mainly arc-shaped surfaces. At this moment, the fairy king Hercules looks more like a knight than Carloman 16 below. Hercules, who has completed many tests and received many assists, is the strongest warrior in the world and the fairy king wearing a crown. The last part of the golden full-body armor, the golden face-covered helmet, covers the appearance of the martial fairy Hercules and protects Rudolph. On the head of the golden face-covered helmet, there is a golden crown. Rudolph's figure completely disappeared, and he was wrapped in the golden helmet of the fairy king Hercules, which was a dazzling crown. The complete form of the fairy king Hercules appeared. All the knights on the battlefield felt despair. This was the despair from instinct, the despair of their strongest abilities being imitated and surpassed. The battlefield was shrouded in golden light, and all the knights illuminated by the golden light stopped involuntarily. Marquis of the Golden Anchor, Palu, took off his helmet. The golden light of the fairy king Hercules shone on his face. He knew there was no need to fight. East Elba had lost, and lost completely. From the day the furnace was wanted, the nobles of East Elba had lost. No, from the announcement of the restoration, East Elba had lost. Duke Stuart of the Unicorn stopped his horse and stopped attacking the airship. As the strongest knight under Carloman 16, he could better understand the oppression brought to the knight by the fairy king Hercules. Hercules used the giant relic. The characteristics of the giant were not very threatening when used by the giant himself, but when used on such an ancient god, the oppression was too strong. Under the gaze of a group of knights, the fairy king Hercules drew out the great sword at his waist. On the golden great sword, golden flames gushed out. This is the golden great sword transformed from the mallet of the golden olive god tree, a great sword belonging to the king. Looking down at Carloman 16 on the ground, the immortal king Hercules raised his arms and chopped down fiercely. With such a huge body, any action should appear slow, but the speed of the sword was so fast that the sword of dozens of meters had an after-image. Carloman 16 felt despair. The glory of the royal family, Crown Prince Tozdan, his kingdom, his dream of empire, and even the temptation of eternal life, all left him at this moment. The golden sword hit him hard on the top of his head, and Carloman just had time to raise the knight's gun. The knight's gun was as fragile as winter straw and broke in front of the golden sword. The momentum of both sides changed fundamentally. Carloman 16 failed to be promoted. The original furnace was only a level 7 wizard. The pressure he brought could not make Carloman 16 promoted. The opposite was different. The level 8 knight mastered the attack power of the level 9 apostle on the battlefield, which made Rudolph feel fatal pressure. Carloman 16 witnessed Furness being promoted like a knight, which completely defeated his confidence. A violent wind wave exploded on the ground, and all the knights stared at His Majesty the King in amazement. There His Majesty the King was slashed by a golden sword that was tens of meters long. This sword surpassed the limit of a level 8 apostle and reached the level of a level 9 apostle. In terms of leapfrogging, the Wuxian Xuanhuan system is not inferior to the knights. The ground where His Majesty the King was instantly sunken by more than 10 meters, and all the soil and rocks were blown away by the wind wave. At the bottom of the pit, His Majesty the King's figure completely disappeared, and there was no body left, only the golden sword was deeply sunken into the ground. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 755. On the high clouds, a female wizard sat on a Gongji dragon. She had white robes and white hair, but her face looked like she was in her 20s. The Gongji dragon suddenly stopped, and its two huge flesh wings flapped in the air, hovering in the air. Ares wizard Melis turned his head to look at the Gongji star field in the north, and the stars of Cepheus were shining. It's too late, the omniscient follower bypassed all the precautions of the pillar of creation, took the special path of Wuxian Xuanhuan, and became a Gongji wizard. As expected of the omniscience, this route was unknown to teacher Ptolemy. From the south sky to Gongji, there are a total of 76 constellations, and even Ptolemy has not collected all the constellation secrets. For example, Cepheus, the pillar of creation, has never mastered the secret formula of Cepheus, and it is impossible to control the wizards of this constellation. The Gongji dragon turned around in the sky and flew back to the direction of Gongji. The battlefield of Vulture Pass fell into a dead silence at this moment, an absolute dead silence. All the knights looked at the center of the battlefield in horror, looking at the immortal King Hercules. All the airships also stopped attacking tacitly, and everyone was waiting for a result. On the artillery position in the distance, the commander-in-chief Joel was trembling all over. Could it be? The figure of the furnace flew out from the head of the immortal King Hercules and flew down. He flew along the arm of the immortal King Hercules to the hilt of the golden sword, and then flew from the hilt of the golden sword to the ground. The golden flame on the golden sword automatically made way for Rudolph, making Rudolph the only moving focus on this silent battlefield. After entering the deep pit, the furnace flew out immediately. The scattered apostle power recondensed, and Rudolph held up a helmet inlaid with a crown. All the nobles looked at the wizards in their team, wanting to get answers from the wizards. Relics. That's a relic. It's the 8th level relic of His Majesty the King. One message after another was passed on the battlefield, and the nobles went from shock to horror, and then to panic. The noble knights' last hope disappeared. Their king failed to be promoted on the battlefield, but was killed by the furnace. The unicorn knights were the first to react, and the trumpeter blew the horn of retreat. The sound spread far, and the knights of the unicorn knights did not return to the camp, but rushed directly to the mouth of the valley. The second was the cavalry division of the Marquis of Golden Anchor, which also turned and rushed to the mouth of the valley. One cavalry team after another turned around. The war had not yet begun, and it was completely lost in a sneak attack. In contrast, a sharp whistle sounded from the flagship airship, which was an order to pursue and an urging to expand the results of the battle. In the Constitutional Army camp, the last reserve airship fleet also took off, flew into the air, and flew to the Vulture Mountains. All the airships on the clouds lowered their altitude, passed through the clouds, appeared under the clouds, and entered the attack altitude. More than 200 airships formed a terrifying firepower network. The fleet commander issued an order: guard the valley entrance. Don't let too many knights escape. The Constitutional Army divided half of its airships and gathered above the valley entrance, throwing a rain of bombs below. Continuous bombs fell from the sky, and some knights in the rear couldn't help but stop. In the constitutional army camp, the infantry and artillery heard the whistle of the general attack. The soldiers held guns and pushed the gun carts, excitedly heading towards the valley entrance. The Unicorn Knights and the cavalry division of the Marquis of the Golden Anchor had just passed the valley entrance, and turned around to find that the remaining knights were blocked outside the valley entrance. Unicorn Duke Stewart, with fear in his heart, raised his knight's gun and prepared to shoot down the flagship at the valley entrance. At this moment, a ghost suddenly appeared in front of him. The ghost hid in a robe with a green skull pattern on it. This is the partner of the furnace, the former pirate Green Skull. Cooper's voice came out from the dark hood. I am the president of the scavengers, and the vice president, the furnace, asked me to bring you a message. Scavengers. President. Vice president. What is the relationship? Why is the Green Skull the president? Why did the president come to bring a message to the vice president? Cooper said, let's go, the furnace allows you to leave. Simple words, but Stewart didn't dare to refute. The demon-like appearance of the immortal King Hercules just now frightened Stewart. Not to mention that he is only a level 7 knight now. Even if he is promoted to a level 8 knight, he is not a match for the immortal King Hercules. Okay, got it? Please tell Vice President Ronglo that we hope to negotiate. Cooper nodded, we can negotiate. After Zirba avenges the people of Eagle's Beak Peninsula and vents his anger, we can negotiate. Stewart felt like he was falling into an ice cellar. The people of Zirba would not let those knights go. The general attack order had been conveyed to every soldier. Now no one could stop the soldiers who were eager for revenge. I hope Mr. Ronglo can deal with the evil god cult in the same way, so that we can avenge Eagle's Beak Peninsula more. Don't worry about this. If Ronglo is capable, none of the evil god priests can escape. At the mouth of the valley, Duke Wilf of the Blue Lion automatically became the commander of all the knights. However, as a commander, he could only watch the team perish. The mouth of the valley was blocked by the airship, and Duke Wilf of the Blue Lion suddenly stopped his horse. All the knights behind him also stopped their horses, and everyone waited for the Duke's decision. The Blue Lion flag moved slowly, and the target was no longer the mouth of the valley, but the enemy behind him. The war horses were galloping, and suddenly a fear-inspiring aura burst out from Wilf, the Duke of Blue Lion. It's not about how strong he is, but Wilf has already realized that he will die. Commander Joel suddenly frowned, it's bad, the knight's strongest ability will appear in the fight of trapped beasts. Rudolph also discovered the abnormality of Duke Wilf. The cold helmet blocked the sight, making it difficult to see the appearance of Duke Wilf, but the Blue Lion flag fluttered in the wind, and his determination to go forward and be ready to die at any time was revealed. Duke Wilf raised his spear and rushed towards the mighty fairy King Hercules. Behind him were his loyal knights, the Blue Lion Knights. Rudolph was like the villain in the Knight novel, he became an obstacle on the road of the Knight's warhorse. He had many choices, but he chose the most respectful way to deal with it. The golden sword was raised high, and the golden flames illuminated the night sky. Holding the sword with both hands, the fairy King Hercules chopped it down fiercely. If Rudolph was just an ordinary level 8 apostle, then the level 7 knight Duke Wilf, who had a real determination to die in his heart, might really be promoted. However, not all stories are as beautiful as those written in knight novels. It is not that knights can kill enemies with swords, and brave knights cannot defeat evil demons every time. A sword that reached the level of a 9th level apostle directly cut off the promotion path of Duke Wilf. Without any ability to resist, Duke Wilf turned into ashes in the flames. The flame on the golden sword went out, and anyone who saw the scene would feel sad. East and West Elba were originally one. 1/3 of West Elba was destroyed by the Wolf Tide and the evil god cult, and more than half of the knights of East Elba were killed or injured. All this should not have happened. The fairy King Hercules raised the sword, pointed it at the airship in the air, and raised it upwards, indicating that they should not attack again. The commander-in-chief of the airship fleet received the order from the special advisor and quickly ordered the airship to raise its altitude and put away its artillery. Under the gaze of the airship and the fairy King Hercules, the surviving knights left the hillside and entered the valley. The Blue Lion Knight's attendant stood in the deep pit, took off his helmet, and shed tears for the Blue Lion Duke, who only had a knight's lance left. Rudolph's figure appeared on the side. "Take the Duke of Wilf's relics and leave. He has won my respect. He is a true knight." Upon hearing this, the Blue Lion Duke's attendant raised his knight's lance and even gave a noble salute to the furnace before turning around and leaving. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 756. The Constitutional Army ceased fire. Some soldiers of the Constitutional Army were very puzzled, but they did not dare to say much when they saw the immortal King Hercules disappearing on the battlefield. It seemed that the furnace advisor was not prepared to continue fighting. The knights and cavalrymen were lucky enough to save their lives and rushed to the valley entrance in a panic. The road at the valley entrance was bombed several times, becoming rugged and uneven, with no place to rest. There were not only pits left by bombs on the ground, but also many fallen horses and knights. This was a tragedy. Thinking back to the Holy Grail city a month ago, the nobles were ambitious. They thought they would be promoted in the war, get a title in the war, and get land in the war. Now everything has become a bubble, even His Majesty the King died in the war. The power of the furnace is frightening, and the power of the giant air blast bomb makes the knight feel powerless. What kind of weapon is that? A giant air blast bomb can kill thousands of knights. The knights seem so weak and powerless in front of the giant air blast bomb. Some timid nobles believed that this was the last restoration of the noble knights, and no knights would ever think of restoring it again. The weapons of the alchemists were too powerful. Even without the furnace, if the Constitution Army had more giant air blast bombs, they could directly defeat several knights with just that terrifying bomb. In the valley of the Vulture Mountains, the dejected knights walked sparsely on the road. The noble in the front was Stuart, the Duke of Unicorn. He survived because he felt that the war had changed since the Wolftide. He began to resist the war and was very perfunctory when fighting. The Unicorn Knights retreated the fastest this time. When the battle was the most intense, the Unicorn Knights did not go deep into the core battlefield and stayed on the periphery. Marquis of the Golden Anchor Palu followed behind the Duke of Unicorn. These were the two most distinguished nobles in the fleeing team, and now they both had livid faces. Caleb gritted his teeth and said nothing. He didn't even dare to mock Kedrick. The strength displayed by the furnace on the battlefield was so frightening. In the past, the nobles believed that Carloman 16 was the first person under the 9th level apostle. Now, this concept has been broken, and the furnace is the first person under the 9th level. Unicorn Duke Stuart said, Marquis Palu, the president of the Scavengers, Green Skull, said that we should wait for him in Port Quarter, and he will preside over the peace talks between East and West Elba. President of the Scavengers. What organization is that? The furnace is the vice president. Oh, the Scavengers are very powerful, Marquis Palu sighed and said. A large number of nobles died in the war, even Duke Wilf died. We are the only nobles in East Elba who can make the decision. Who would have thought that we would gain the power of the kingdom in this way? Yes, even Duke Wilf died. Stuart turned his head and looked to the side, where the Duke Wilf's servants were, carrying a knight's gun, which was the relic of Duke Wilf. It was surprising that the furnace did not take the precious 7th level knight relic. At this time, at the mouth of the valley, the soldiers of the Constitutional Army were cheering for the great victory of the war. An airship hovered next to Rudolph, and the commander-in-chief Joel jumped from the airship. Unexpectedly, this old man in his 50s was still very agile, and nothing happened to him after jumping from a height of more than 10 meters. He came to Rudolph excitedly and asked, Mr. Consultant, should we prepare and continue to attack the noble knights in the valley? Rudolph shook his head and said, The nobles of East Elba no longer have the strength to touch West Elba, there is no need. If East Elba is too weak and is discovered by the evil god cult, the evil god cult may take down East Elba at a very small price, which will be a greater threat to you at that time. Joel nodded, well, a weak East Elba is the best East Elba. If you hit it too hard, it is likely that other forces will take advantage of it. Rudolph asked, you still have the last level 8 giant air blast bomb left, right? Joel nodded. Send a giant air blast bomb to the Garan region to deal with the evil god cult. In a few days, we will go to Quarter Port and reach an agreement with the nobles to cease fire with East Elba. It's a bit cheap for the nobles, but I understand your painstaking efforts, Joel said. The Wolf Tide and the evil god cult, each of which may destroy our country, it is more important to concentrate our forces to deal with these two forces. You have eliminated the threat in one direction, and you can focus on the enemies in the remaining two directions. After learning about the consultant's attitude, Joel hurried to give orders. If the consultant says not to fight, then don't fight. Because according to the previous deeds of the furnace, if West Elba doesn't obey, he will directly take action and force West Elba to obey. That time in the Eagle's Beak Peninsula, the furnace consultant directly snatched the giant air blast bomb of Belfour City. Cleaning the battlefield, holding a celebration banquet, adjusting deployment and redistributing troops, Joel has a lot to do. He estimated that only 5,000 Constitutional Army troops were needed at the valley entrance of the Vulture Mountains, and the remaining Constitutional Army troops could be transferred to the Garan region to fight against the evil god cult in the Garan region. In this way, the goals of the Constitutional Army are more consistent with those of the consultant, and they can get more support from the consultant. Hat from the Eagle's Beak Peninsula was extremely excited when he heard that they could return to the Garan region. Compared with fighting the knights, they prefer to fight against the evil god cult. The wizards of the scavengers collected relics on the battlefield, and these relics will become the raw materials for their future magic weapons. The scavenger wizards walked on the battlefield, and the alchemists of the Constitutional Army did not say much. The Constitutional Army must get used to this phenomenon. As long as the furnace is still Elba's advisor, they will see the appearance of wizards collecting relics many times. Rudolph picked and chose and got some high-level relics. On this battlefield, he did not get many fresh relics that were enough to light up the new star map. The progress of Capricornus has reached 4/9, and the most important relic is the level 8 Knight Helmet. The level 8 Knight Helmet flew to the Capricornus Gamma Star, and 3 suspended stars fell from the Capricornus Gamma Star. Level 8 Strong Bones, Level 8 King's Helmet, Level 8 Archdraco Secret Style. Rudolph is now a Cepheus wizard, and his body is no worse than that of a knight, and he does not need physical enhancement. As for the magic weapon, he didn't need it. He now had the full-body golden armor of the ancient fire god, as well as the god's shield, the sun silver bow and other ancient artifacts, which had strong offensive and defensive capabilities. He chose the third option, the 8th level Archdragon Constellation Secret Formula. Archdragon Constellation Secret Formula. Star Map, Tianlong 6-pointed star. Main relics -8th level Druid relics or 8th level Fire Wizard relics or 8th level Knight relics. Secondary relics -8th level Blood Clan relics or 8th level Werewolf relics or 8th level Giant relics, 8th level White Magic Priest relics or 8th level Pain Priest relics. Ritual location, the direct area of Dragon Constellation, the Elton Great Glacier. Seeing that the secret location was a glacier, Rudolph remembered the news that Hermes told him. The Arctic glaciers were all controlled by the Pillar of Creation. If the star map hadn't told Rudolph the special way to become a Cepheus wizard, he would definitely be killed by the Pillar of Creation when he went to the Arctic glacier. I wonder if those fire wizards are cold in the Arctic glacier. They are really hurting others and themselves. Rudolph, the Wizard of Draco, has seen that many characteristics and abilities of this constellation are very strong. Just the star condensation flash alone is very enviable. Although the Draco secret formula is good, the limitation of the secret formula location makes the secret formula temporarily useless. After the promotion, Rudolph's improvement is all round. The 11 forbidden techniques he mastered have all reached the level of level 8. Larry, the level 8 word spirit, Abigail, the level 8 silver snake, and Vanya, the level 8 blood clan, the three puppets are hung under their respective constellations, sleeping in the light cocoon, breathing steadily. In addition to the fairy king Hercules, the combination of several fire and earth forbidden techniques makes Rudolph's actual combat power very impressive. Praise the star map. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 757. Is he a mad dog? Is he crazy? In the royal court of Lothair, Lothair 11 looked at the information in his hand in shock. Carloman 16, that man actually died? Died in the hands of the furnace? East Elba defeated? A large number of knights died at the mouth of the Valley of the Vulture Mountains? The battle situation at the foot of the Vulture Mountain was rushed to the hands of all forces. Lothair's court was shocked when the same night restored the kingdom. All the nobles listened in astonishment to His Majesty the King's slightly flustered words. Most of these nobles are high-ranking nobles, dukes, and marquises. Some of them are of low status and appear to be very special. It was not surprising that the Marquis of Eddern appeared in the court, but it was strange for the Earl of Baron, the Viscount of Savannah and a Baron Jennifer to enter the king's court. King Lothair XI's gaze crossed all the nobles and landed on Baron Jennifer at the back. Jennifer Baron, please come forward. A baron cannot receive special attention from the king under any circumstances, but Jennifer is different. Jennifer stepped forward, and she was also shocked by Rudolph's ferocity and actually killed the king. Who would have thought that Rudolph would grow from a patrolman in Lehman Town to a powerful wizard who could execute the king? Baron Jennifer, please ignore that I just used some bad words to describe Mr. Furness, but I am so shocked. A king, two dukes, even in the constitutional war more than 200 years ago, there was no such thing. A brutal battle. Jennifer didn't say anything, and His Majesty the King actually called Rudolph a mad dog, and he wasn't afraid that it would reach Rudolph's ears. Jennifer Baron, I want to ask you something. Please give me your orders, Your Majesty the King. The furnace is the Scorpio wizard. The most famous witch language of the Scorpio wizard is hatred, and he is the wizard most easily affected and driven by hatred, Lothair 11 asked. I read the information from the royal falcon attendant that the forge has a deep hatred for werewolves and evil god priests. What is his attitude towards knights? Does he also have that level of hatred? No, Your Majesty the King, the forge's attitude towards the knights is not significantly different from that towards the alchemist. I think the reason why the forge dealt with East Elba was because East Elba's aggressive attitude affected the forge's attitude towards the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. The cult of evil god Jennifer thought her guess was very accurate. The Scorpio wizard is sinister and vindictive. His hatred is very single-minded. If the kingdom of East Elba can maintain a restrained attitude after the evil god cult lands on the Eagle Beak Peninsula, even if it makes some false peace talks, the forge will not. East Elba is so heavy-handed. The nobles in the hall fell into silence. They thought that what Baron Jennifer said was right. Melting Pot's unscrupulous and reckless style shocked these nobles greatly. After getting the answer he wanted, Lothair 11 breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the furnace doesn't come and beat him to death for no reason, then everything will be fine. He couldn't help but curse the furnace dozens of times in his heart. The death of another king made him hurt others, and his mental state was somewhat abnormal. Baron Jennifer, I hope you can enter the Royal Knights. I will make you an earl. I hope you can achieve enough military exploits in the Royal Knights. When the land of the Carolingian states is recovered, you will become the Earl of a certain county. Jennifer was stunned. She didn't expect His Majesty the King to be so generous and directly made her an earl. Of course, this does not violate the tradition of military honors. Lothair XI needed to find an excuse. When the knights of Marquis Etienne were returning north, you convinced the wizard Forge to let him escort you. After detailed investigation, I decided to award you with military merit and a title. I hope you will continue to work hard and make meritorious deeds for the kingdom. It has been a long time since Marquis Etienne returned to the north. The king's investigation was really slow, and the results are only now available. Generosity is your virtue, your majesty, and I will fight for you in the royal knights. Jennifer understood that she had been influenced by Rudolph from afar. Lothair XI seemed not to be satisfied yet. He added, if you make further military exploits, I will make you my marquis as soon as possible. Oh, of course, you are now a level 5 knight, and your knight level also needs to be upgraded. Your Majesty, please rest assured that I will fight with my life against the Carolingian states and seek advancement in battle. While the fighting raged between East and West Elba, Lothair and Carolingian artillery fire was also flying. Without the Wolf Tide and the Evil Cult, the war between the two sides would be even more cruel. Okay. The Royal Knights of the Mogwen Empire have already set off and are marching south from the wilderness. We must also speed up and capture the United Carolingian states as soon as possible, and then enter West Elba together. Jennifer was shocked when she heard this. Did the Knights of the Polar Knight finally move? The news of the Polar Knight's dispatch was sent to the hands of the Ares wizard Melis, who had already returned to the glacier. Corvinus, the incarnation of the distant ancestor of the werewolf, and Carloman 16 of East Elba, are really a pair of losers. And did not cause a single destruction in West Elba. Elba for such a long time. How can the authority of destruction appear? Mogwen 9 finally couldn't sit still anymore, and he was going to die personally. I don't know if the evil gods in the south can sit still. If Mogwen 9 is fast, his front will point to the point of destruction. By the time the power of destruction appears beside Mogwen 9, it will be too late for the evil gods to do anything. The Royal Midnight Knights of Emperor Megwen were dispatched, making these evil gods feel a sense of urgency. Waves of faith were heard from several evil temples in the southern continent. Holy light perish. A ball of colorful light descended from the pyramid of the sun god. The 9th level priest, the Pope, knelt under the pyramid, listening to the oracle of the Lord of Holy Light. The colorful light finally gathered into a blazing white light like the sun, illuminating the Pope and tens of thousands of priests on the Shinto. Painful perish. In the redemption blood pool, a squirming tumor kept expanding and contracting. The blood vessels on it were not as thick as human blood vessels, and there was purple rotten flesh between the blood vessels. The thick fog covered the horrible appearance of the tumor. The Pope of the Redemption Church knelt at the edge of the blood pool, listening to the oracle of the Lord of Redemption. Oblivion perish. The void Rift Valley was filled with black air. It is said that the bottom of the Rift Valley is the endless abyss. 12 rotating tentacles appeared on the Great Rift Valley, with a huge eye in the center. The Pope of the Church of Nothingness knelt on the cliff beside the Rift Valley, listening to the oracle of the Lord of Nothingness. Insect nest perish. In the endless rainforest, there is a towering tree. The tree has no leaves, only a blackened trunk. A triangular crack appeared at the bottom of the trunk, and inside was a spider more than 10 meters high. The Pope of the Church of Harvest knelt in front of the spider, listening to the oracle of the goddess of harvest. Trapped perish. Under the iron furnace volcano, the Pope of the Church of Trapped listened to the oracle of the god of craftsmen. Ascetic perish. In the holy monastery, the Pope of the ascetic church knelt at the feet of the white marble statue of the goddess of purity after bathing. Such a scene happened in 6 churches, and all the priests received the oracle of the expedition. They will cross the Sarago Sea and enter the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. The drastic changes in the distance did not affect Zirba's enjoyment of the victory of the war. In Lajur, the Senate decided to take a 3-day holiday, and the whole city became a sea of celebration. The victory on the Eastern Front was reported, and the sword hovering over West Elba, and the nobles of East Elba suffered heavy losses. King Carloman XVI of East Elba died, Duke of Ramasino and Duke of Blue Lion Wilf died. To achieve all this, West Elba only used 5 level 8 giant air blast bombs, and of course, a special consultant status for the furnace. The furnace consultant was very busy. After the victory of the war, he immediately presided over the peace talks between East and West Elba. In the city of Quarterport, Rudolf sat at the end of the long table, with nobles on his left and alchemists on his right. The level 8 divination was very bad. There was no joy after the victory of the war in Rudolf's eyes, only lingering worries. Speed up the pace and enter the field at level 9. After a period of slight disadvantage, immediately enter the killing mode. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 758. Joel, the Commander-in-Chief of the Eastern Front of the Constitutional Army, and Raymondi, the Commander of the Navy of the Constitutional Army, sat at the long table. In the second row of seats behind the two, there sat a group of senior officers of the Constitutional Army, looking down on the nobles opposite. 3 great nobles came from East Elba, Duke Stewart of the Unicorn and Duke Palu of the Golden Anchor, and a royal prince. At the coronation ceremony of the young King Wenlun IX, the young king canonized Palu Leg as the Duke of the Golden Anchor. King Wenlun is the nephew of Carloman XVI. East Elba is too short of people who can take charge. Almost all the nobles of the previous generation died at the mouth of the Valley of the Vulture Mountains. Many of the new nobles are young people who have hurriedly inherited the title, just like the young king. In the second row of seats behind the 2 dukes, there are young nobles. Both sides are waiting for the furnace sitting in the main seat to speak first. The trend of this peace talk depends entirely on the furnace. It does not depend on the attitude of the furnace, but on the strength of the furnace. Only a peace agreement recognized by the furnace can be implemented, because the furnace has the power to tear up any agreement. Rudolf first glanced at Duke Palu, who stood up. As Duke Palu stood up, the royal prince also stood up. The prince stepped forward and spoke first. King Wenlun IX of East Elba asked me to express his apology to Mr. Furnace. Mr. Furnace was once a friend of the royal family of East Elba, but the former king was deceived by the werewolves and failed this friendship. East Elba has captured the messenger of the werewolf ancestor mountain and sent him to Mr. Furnace. Please deal with him at will. In the past, on the Sarago Sea, Mr. Furnace had fought against the evil god Navy together with the Royal Navy. I hope Mr. Furnace can accept the apology of His Majesty Wenlun IX. Wenlun IX is the nephew of Carloman XVI, not his biological son. If Rudolf had not killed Crown Prince Thorsten and King Carloman XVI one after another, it would not be the turn of Wenlun IX, a 15-year-old child, to inherit the throne. Rudolf took the king's handwritten letter from the prince and read the contents of the letter. How could a 15-year-old child who had just ascended the throne know how to surrender? It was just that several great nobles of East Elba felt that the situation forced them to bow their heads. Rudolf said, "Thank you for the letter from His Majesty Wenlun IX. I hope we can continue to fight side by side and jointly deal with the evil god cult." The prince breathed a sigh of relief and retreated. Before the negotiation began, a staff officer brought in a piece of intelligence. The intelligence was placed in front of Rudolf first. Rudolf looked at the intelligence and frowned more and more. Others were a little uneasy, wondering what intelligence made the furnace so serious. After handing the intelligence to Joel, Rudolf waited for several people to circulate the intelligence. Even the 2 nobles opposite saw the intelligence. The Pope of the evil god cult has left the southern continent and is about to enter the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. Following the Pope, all the main forces of various churches are coming. Upon hearing this news, Joel and Raymondi's originally relaxed mood suddenly became heavy. The two dukes were also in a bad mood. They didn't know if there would be any changes in the negotiations. Rudolph said, "The civil war has been going on for so long, and there is no need to continue. The restoration of the nobles failed, and the unification of the alchemists also failed. If there had been no civil war, if Elba was still a unified kingdom, the situation would not be as bad as it is now. You can focus on dealing with the wolf tide and the evil god cult. With the original national strength of Elba, the 8th level alchemical air blast bombs were twice as many, and the evil god cult would not have the opportunity to build a temple. Of course, it's too late to say anything now. I won't consult your opinions. I will set the general framework of the peace agreement. You can add your opinions if you have any." After seeing the alchemists and nobles nod, Rudolph continued. "Nobles, withdraw from the Vulture Mountains. There are many mines in the Vulture Mountains. Return the Vulture Mountains to the alchemists. The port of Quarter is jointly managed by the alchemists and the nobles. It will become a trading port for materials. The two sides will establish trade channels and exchange what they have. East Elba will help maintain the trade route to ensure that the materials and weapons of the United States of Cantal can be smoothly delivered to the territory of West Elba. The two sides will cease fire. Within 5 years, the alchemists and noble knights will no longer fight. West Elba will focus on dealing with the wolf tide and the evil god cult, and the noble knights will recuperate. How about you sign a truce agreement?" The alchemists and nobles began to whisper. Rudolph did not listen carefully to what they were discussing, but was lost in thought. The 6 popes of the evil god cult have entered the Eagle's Beak Peninsula. When they accumulate a certain amount of power, the iron wall of distress in the north of the Eagle's Beak Peninsula will open, and countless priests will walk out from behind the iron wall to expand the diocese. Although he now has strength beyond level 8, he still seems not good enough in front of the level 9 pope holding a divine weapon. I don't know when it started, the conference room fell into silence. The alchemists and nobles finished their discussions and waited for the furnace to finish thinking. Rudolph's thoughts drifted back from the Eagle's Beak Peninsula and asked, "What have you two considered?" Joel spoke first. "Mr. Advisor, we agree to this peace agreement." Unicorn Duke Stewart then said, "Mr. Furnace, we also agree to this peace agreement." "Okay, then the Elba Civil War that lasted for more than 3 years is finally over." Rudolph did not mention the merger of the two countries. It is unrealistic to say this now. The hatred has spread. It is impossible for the two sides to return to the state before the war. It is perfect to be able to cease fire. The secretary quickly drafted the agreement, and the two sides signed the peace agreement under the witness of Rudolph. After the signing of the peace agreement, Rudolph also accepted the canonization of the royal family of East Elba. The royal family of East Elba thanked the furnace for bringing them peace and canonized the furnace as the royal advisor of the royal family of East Elba. The royal family of East Elba now has no level 8 apostles. If the parish of the evil god cult expands, the person who is willing to provide protection for East Elba is actually the furnace that caused their defeat. The next day, the headlines in the newspapers made the people of East and West Elba fall into a carnival. People waved newspapers and celebrated the truce. In the photo of the newspaper, 3 people sat at a long table. Admiral Joel of West Elba and Duke Stewart of the Unicorn of East Elba both bowed their heads and signed. There was also a person sitting between the two of them. This person now has 2 identities, a special advisor to the West Elba House of Lords and a royal advisor to the East Elba royal family. For ordinary people, it is difficult for them to understand why one person can become an advisor to 2 hostile kingdoms, but this does not affect the people's gratitude to this person. Thank God, the terrible war is finally over. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 759. After the peace talks at Coderport, Rudolf and his party happened to encounter the Eastern Front troops of the Constitutional Army who were halfway there. This force will go to the Garan region to establish a defense line to fight against the evil cult. The first wave of wizard apprentices of the scavenger are the Lion Wizards in August Leo. It's October, the month of Libra, and the third wave of young people have become apprentices to the Libra Wizards. Ahriman and Rudolf said, "Teacher, why don't you go see Captain Hit? I think there is something abnormal about him." "Not normal? What's not normal?" "He seems to want to create a wizard group." "Wizards?" Hearing this title, Rudolf was also stunned. During the war, the regiments of the Constitutional Army were all reinforced regiments, with a strength of more than 2,000. When he saw Hit, he found that Hit was looking up at the stars. Hit himself is an alchemist, but he looks up at the stars like a wizard. He asked his officers, "This month, 270 people have become Libra wizards. What about the remaining 60 people born in Libra month?" The adjutant said, "Captain, the remaining 60 or so people really don't have wizard talent." Rudolf was shocked when he heard the conversation between the two. He selects young people with high talents and the keenest sense of star power, and Hader actually requires the entire regiment of soldiers born in the Libra moon to become wizards. This is too exaggerated. Hit asked again, "Are the star stones enough?" "The star stone is okay. It can support us for at least 2 months. After 2 months, the star stone will not be enough." "I understand. I'm going to find a way to find Mr. Ahriman and see if I can get the star stone when I pass by the Black Gold Institute." A gust of wind blew by, and Hit turned his head and saw the furnace beside him. "Forge Counselor, when did you arrive?" The elusive furnace is always so elusive. "Well, I just came," Rudolf asked. "Captain Hit, what are you doing?" "I heard Ahriman say that you sent people to observe the awakening ceremony of the scavenger's wizard apprentice, and then let the soldiers in your regiment also become a wizard's apprentice." "Yes, Mr. Counselor, you allowed me to do that last time." "I allowed it, but I thought my permission was allowing you to secretly select some people among the soldiers to become wizards. I didn't expect that you would let all your soldiers try their best to become wizards. This is too exaggerated. Mr. Consultant, the people who escaped from the Yingzhou Peninsula all want to become stronger. Please come and observe once. Watch the awakening of the people of the Yingzhou Peninsula, and you will understand why we do this. It's not that I ask them to do this. It's that if I don't follow their expectations, I won't be able to do my job as the leader." Rudolf was a little surprised. He didn't expect Hit to give him such an explanation. "Okay, next month is the Wizard Scorpio month. Then I will come to your camp and prepare enough star stones for you to see how they convince me." When the troops arrived at the border of the Garan region, it was November. This is Rudolf's birth month, the wizarding month with which Rudolf is most familiar. When the troops arrived at the border of the Garan region, it happened to be the Scorpio month in November. Rudolf was very curious. He wanted to know what Hit was doing. "Forge Consultant, thank you for coming. I hope you can continue to support us after this collective awakening ceremony." After Hit finished speaking, he went to organize the awakening ceremony. Rudolf stood at the side of the camp and silently observed the ceremony. About 300 young people entered the venue. These are the young people born in the Scorpio month of this group. Young people with very high talents were picked out by Rudolf, and these people's talents can only be said to be average. In front of more than 300 young people, a flag hung. Rudolf looked over and found that the flag was very simple, with only a red outline of an eagle's head. When he saw the eagle head, Rudolf understood why they chose this flag. The people from the Eagle's Mouth Peninsula use this flag to commemorate the destruction of the Eagle's Mouth Peninsula. Hit walked to the front and stood under the blood-red eagle's head flag. After the officers finished distributing the starstones, Hit turned around and saluted to the eagle's head flag. He stretched out his right hand and pressed it on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. All soldiers have an eagle head badge on their chest. Live with hatred. Fight with hatred. I miss my relatives with hatred. Curse my enemies with hatred. Blood feud. An irresolvable blood feud. We will never forget this blood feud from generation to generation. Let us die on the road to revenge. Let us die in front of our enemies. Let us die stepping on the enemy's corpse. It said something, and the remaining young people followed suit. Rudolf remembered that Haidt once led soldiers from Danny City to form an organization called Blood Vengeance. Later, not only the city of Danny was destroyed, but the entire Eagle's Mouth Peninsula was destroyed by the evil god cult. The scale of the blood feud continued to expand, becoming the spiritual sustenance of the survivors of the entire Eagle's Mouth Peninsula. The alchemists in West Elba are getting poorer and poorer. They don't have the resources to let so many people take the path of apostles. The path of wizards has become their life-saving straw. Young people began to use star stones to draw the astrological triangle in front of them. This scene is very shocking. Everyone is 2 meters apart, squatting and silently carving the astrological triangle. After drawing the astrological grand triangle, they stood in the grand triangle, looked up in the direction of Scorpio, and began to attract star power. About 40 people have no wizard talent, and they wasted the star stone in vain. The remaining 200 people stand in the astrological triangle and can feel the star power from the starlight. Some people with slightly higher talents even have a faint blue light on their bodies, which is a manifestation of the rapid gathering of star power. Soon, they will experience the witch language. What surprised Rudolf was that he did not see the purple color representing the Scorpio witch language toxin on anyone, and all he saw was a faint red light. Scorpio witch language hatred. Scorpio is very famous for its grudges and BlackBelly. Hatred is one of the important witch languages of Scorpio wizards. Hatred can swallow up people's reason. Rudolf used this witch language when making the forbidden puppet. The toxin has the characteristic of constantly attacking the enemy, which is also because of the witch language hatred. Hatred is like a thorn in the flesh, always entangled with the enemy. In addition, hatred can also make people's adrenaline surge, and once poisoned, the toxin will spread rapidly. Rudolf had seen the collective awakening ceremony, but the witch language of the collective awakening was hatred, which moved Rudolf a little. They really hated the evil god cult, hated the enemies who invaded their homeland, and hated the enemies who sacrificed their relatives. Except for more than 40 people who had no wizard talent, the remaining more than 280 people all awakened and became Scorpio wizards. Those who failed to awaken, squatted in the unchanged star triangle, crying bitterly. People's talents are different. Maybe they have other apostle talents, but in the matter of Scorpio wizards, they can't feel the star power in the starlight and can't become wizards. After Hader presided over the awakening ceremony, he came to Rudolf and looked at the furnace uneasily. Hate, I promise you, I will give you more resources to help you build a stronger blood feud organization. After everyone else dispersed, Rudolf entered absolute concealment and stayed there for a long time without leaving. He looked in the direction of Scorpio and felt a little touched. In the hatred star power created by more than 280 wizard apprentices, Rudolf suddenly found that his Scorpio star power, which had been dormant for a long time, had some changes. His Scorpio star power has become stronger. Although it is only a little bit, Rudolf will not be wrong. The Scorpio star power has definitely become stronger. Does becoming a level 9 Zodiac Scorpio wizard require such stimulation? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 760. 120,000 constitutional troops and huge weapons and equipment are moving to the Garan region. Even if there is a railway, it will take a long time to complete the transfer. The collective awakening ceremony of the Scorpio wizard apprentices touched Rudolph deeply and opened a door for him. He then watched the wizard apprentices' awakening ceremony in the Sagittarius month of December. The regiment led by Hit was composed entirely of people from the Eagle's Beak Peninsula, and they called themselves the Blood Vengeance Group. In December, Rudolph once again felt the abnormality during the collective awakening ceremony of the Blood Vengeance Group. More than 300 people born in December have hot and angry eyes when receiving star power. This is their chance to change their destiny and the beginning of them becoming stronger. As the strongest wizard below level 9, Rudolph's perception of star power is so keen. Hatred. The eyes of these more than 300 wizard apprentices are full of hatred. December is Sagittarius month, but Rudolph still feels hatred in his star power. Hatred is a very common emotion. Scorpio wizards are most sensitive to hatred, but other wizards are also full of hatred. Rudolph channeled the Scorpio star power, and the reaction of Scorpio witch language hate was so strong. He was extremely certain that his Scorpio star power became stronger when surrounded by hatred. Surrounded by hatred, Rudolph's emotions were also infected. When he used the Scorpion witch language, hatred, he felt a sense of pain in his heart. Emotions are emotions. Star power affects Rudolph's emotions, and emotions also affect Rudolph's star power. For Rudolph, who was already a top Gongji wizard, the increase in Scorpio's star power surprised him very much. Level 9 apostles will undergo qualitative changes, while level 8 apostles have almost reached the limit of conventional power. Immortal King Hercules is the being closest to the limit of power. Even if Rudolph completes more secret formulas, the improvement to Immortal King Hercules will be limited. If you want to become a level 9 apostle, you must complete a change in the quality of your power level in some way. Hatred. The young people in the Blood Feud organization became wizards with their overwhelming hatred. This hatred seemed to become some kind of nutrient, making the Scorpio star power in Rudolph stronger. Could hatred help Rudolph be promoted to level 9 Zodiac Wizard? The emotions were connected, Rudolph was infected and experienced subtle changes. Feeling the changes in himself, Rudolph had a new plan. There is a large town outside Garan city, which was destroyed by the wolf tide. After simple repairs, the constitutional army was stationed in it. Hit followed Ahriman, and Mr. Consultant came to Hit for something. After seeing Hit, Rudolph felt a little anxious. Commander Hit, I have obtained permission from Commander-in-Chief Joel. I hope you can let your battalion commanders, company commanders, platoon commanders, squad leaders, and even soldiers, disperse to form a militia group. Militia group, Hit was very confused. He didn't know why Mr. Consultant wanted to organize a militia group at this time. The combat effectiveness of the militia group is not high. It can simply deal with low-level apostles, but it is of little use in regular wars. Yes, militia group. You select people whose homes were destroyed by the evil cult and recruit them into the militia group. I will be responsible for providing star stones to your militia group so that as many of them can awaken as possible and become wizards. Rudolph didn't say that such an awakening ritual would make him stronger. He found a reason. The combination of the utter hatred for the evil cult and the wizard's apostle ability can allow the militia to play a powerful role. When the strength of the militia group increases, your regular group can also be separated and form a separate blood-feuding army. Even after Rudolph hesitated, he told Hite a desperate fact. Even people from the Garan region can join the Blood Revenge Army in the future, because their homes will also be destroyed. I don't have the confidence to fight against 7 popes. The popes of the evil god religion are all level 9 apostles. They also possess artifacts and are much stronger than me. Mr. Advisor, can't even you defeat them? Hit was in a daze. After defeating the knight, he thought victory would eventually belong to 11 Elba. Do you remember what it looked like when you finally evacuated the Eagle's Beak Peninsula? Only one of our airships escaped. The other airships, Rubio's flagship airship, and the airships of the three captains, were all destroyed by the evil cult. Desperate. So desperate. Even though the apostles have superpowers far beyond ordinary people, they are still full of despair in many things. I understand, Mr. Advisor, I will form the Blood Vengeance Army to make the militias strong. After Hit left, Rudolph asked Ahriman to find a suitable meteorite, and then asked level 1 wizards to turn the meteorite into a starstone. The first wave of wizard apprentices awakened in the Leo month of August, and they have been promoted to level 1 wizards in the Sagittarius month of December, which is also the fire sign. The Virgo wizard apprentice who awakened in September was also promoted in the Capricorn month of January this month. There are more than 60 level 1 wizards in the scavenger, and these wizards can make a large number of starstones. Ahriman, I have to separate you and Blanca for a while. Ahriman was a little surprised and didn't know why the teacher said that. I will take Blanca to the Luberon region and copy the Blood Vengeance Army wizard in the Luberon region. In the Luberon region, which was ravaged by werewolves, many people were driven crazy by hatred. If you provide them with a little help, they can become stronger as soon as possible and better fight against the wolf tide. Blanca's voice sounded, "Teacher, you don't need to ask for his opinion. I will pack up and go to Luberon with you." I don't know what Blanca wanted to talk to the teacher about, but I happened to hear the conversation between the teacher and Ahriman. Ahriman scratched his head awkwardly and watched Blanca leave. Blanca didn't even look at Ahriman during the whole process. Rudolph's gossip fire ignited, and he asked with interest, "Ahriman, did you quarrel with Blanca?" Not really, I almost confessed last time, but I held back in the end." "What? Why did you hold back?" "I'm just a level 5 wizard, I'm afraid I don't have the ability to protect her." Suddenly, distant memories made Rudolph speak much slower. "Enjoy, indulge, try, and make mistakes, young people should not live too restrained." These words came out of his mouth, which were what Sheriff Claude once said to him. Regret after being reckless is painful, but the regret of doing nothing will slowly torture you for a longer time. Regret of doing nothing. Ahriman understood the meaning of the sentence, and he hurried to chase Blanca. Rudolph sat on a chair and looked out the window. For some reason, this window looked like the window of the sheriff's office. Level 8 Silver Snake Abigail appeared beside Rudolph. Looking at Abigail's mature and beautiful face, Rudolph could not hide his disgust in his heart. After several years, Rudolph still felt that Abigail was too strong at that time. "Why are you so strong? If you were not so strong, would Sheriff Claude not die?" "Take back Abigail, don't want her to appear for a second. If Sheriff Claude is here, Cooper will never be the president of the Scavengers. Cooper will have to be the vice president with me." Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 761. Chapter 761 Level 8 Magical Artifact, Star Condensed Dragon Scale. Rudolph has the secret formula of the Arching Draco, but he dares not go to the Arctic Glacier. Ptolemy has been a dark cloud covering the continent for thousands of years, and Rudolph does not think he dares to challenge Ptolemy. However, the flash of Draco that ignores distance makes him very envious. Late at night, Rudolph took out a precious level 8 relic. Level 8 Dragon Scale. This is a relic obtained after killing the arching wizard Nadila. In order to obtain more hateful Scorpio star power, Rudolph is ready to spend a lot of money to make a magic weapon. Using the relic of a level 8 wizard to make a magic weapon, telling others will make them crazy. Spendthrift, waste, and squander. At least that's what Ahriman and Blanca think. The young couple just reconciled and were standing not far away to witness the birth of a level 8 magic weapon. To become an 8th level arched pole wizard, You need 3 8th level relics, each of which is extremely precious. The teacher actually wants to use one of the 8th level relics. The star stone automatically broke into powder and flew in front of Rudolph, hovering 20 centimeters above the ground, forming a star triangle. The pure white dragon scales of the dragon appeared in the palm of Rudolph's hand and floated towards the star triangle. Rudolph looked up in the direction of Scorpio, and then in the direction of Arched Pole Draco, thinking about the witch language required for this magic weapon. The Draco wizard has a supermodel ability, that is, he can appear from the starlight wherever the Draco starlight shines. This ability made Rudolph suffer a lot. He stayed up all day for several days and did not dare to leave the absolute concealment. Rudolph wanted to replicate the Blood Vengeance Army in the Luberon region and use the star power of the Blood Vengeance Army wizards to increase his own Scorpio star power. Rudolph wanted the Hatred Scorpio star power of the two regions. However, he could not leave the Garan region for a long time. Without him, the Garan region would be no different from being given to the evil god cult. The only solution is to master the ability to appear in two places in a short period of time. After thinking for a long time, Rudolph had to take out the precious 8th level Arched Dragon Wizard relic. Only the Arched Dragon Wizard has similar characteristics. Through the relics of the Arched Dragon Wizard, Rudolph felt a little bit of the Draco star power. Combining the Draco star power, Rudolph began to conceive the witch language. The first witch language is the Gemini witch language fission. The Gemini star power descended, and the dragon scale of the dragon appeared cracked in the middle under the action of the Gemini star power. Once the bow is shot, there is no turning back. This relic can only be made into a witch weapon. There was a cracking sound of glass breaking in the air, which scared Arimon and Blanca in the distance. How could such an important relic be broken at the beginning? An irregular lightning-shaped crack appeared in the middle of the dragon scale of the dragon, and the dragon scale was split into two halves. The second witch language, Libra witch language equivalence began to work. Under the influence of Libra's star power, the two broken halves of the dragon scale can maintain the characteristics of the dragon scale of the sky dragon. The third witch language, Pisces witch language entanglement, joined the witch weapon. Several filamentary beams appeared between the two halves of the dragon scale. No matter how far apart the two halves of the dragon scale are, as long as they are illuminated by the starlight, they will have a special connection. Then, the remaining apostle power in the dragon scale of the sky dragon, the characteristics of the sky dragon, began to transform the two dragon scales. The stars in the sky dragon shine at this moment, echoing the remaining star power in the relic. The star stone powder bathed in the starlight of different constellations, absorbed enough star power, and began to flow to the relic, slowly infiltrating the relic. Rudolph's level 8 witch weapon, the level 8 star condensed dragon scale, is completed. Arimon and Blanca looked at this witch weapon with expectation, wondering what effect the legendary level 8 witch weapon has. Rudolph waved his hand, and Vanya appeared beside him. After Vanya appeared, he quickly disappeared with half a piece of star condensation dragon scale. There was only the sound of sonic boom in the air, and the 4 times speed of sound of the 8th level Blood Clan flashed, allowing him to advance more than 1,300 meters in 1 second. After Vanya left the field of vision far away, the remaining half piece of star condensation dragon scale floated in front of Rudolph. The star condensation dragon scale emitted starlight, shining on Rudolph. Rudolph's body began to fade, and soon turned into starlight, disappearing in the star condensation dragon scale. The next moment, Rudolph appeared more than 10 kilometers away. The half piece of star condensation dragon scale taken away by Vanya was emitting starlight, and Rudolph's figure walked out of the starlight. It's done, this luxurious 8th level magic weapon works well. Vanya disappeared in Rudolph's palm, and Rudolph disappeared again holding half a piece of star condensation dragon scale. Arimon and Blanca saw the teacher appear again, and they didn't understand what the 8th level magic weapon was for. Rudolph handed half of the dragon scale to Blanca, Blanca, pack up your things tomorrow and go to Luberon. Feinstein, the commander-in-chief of the Constitutional Army in Luberon, and I will go there right away. Ahriman asked doubtfully, Teacher, the situation in Garan is more dangerous than Luberon. Are you going to leave Garan at this time? It doesn't matter. This magic weapon can help me shuttle between the two places. Shuttling between the two places, Blanca was very confused after taking the dragon scale. This magic weapon is called Star Condensation Dragon Scale, which allows me to flash in the starlight of the magic weapon. Draco is a circumpolar constellation, and its starlight shines on the entire northern continent. No matter how far away, as long as I am illuminated by the starlight of Draco, I can appear instantly. Blanca understood that this luxurious 8th level magic weapon was actually a magic weapon that ignored the distance limit and was very convenient for traveling. Teacher, what if such a precious 8th level magic weapon is stolen? Hearing Blanca's question, Rudolph smiled and said, if it was another 8th level magic weapon, it would indeed cause a scramble. But why would anyone come to rob this magic weapon? The only function of the Star Condensed Dragon Scale is to summon me. Are the people who rob your magic weapon not afraid of death? Even if the news of this magic weapon leaks out, no one will be so desperate to rob it. Hearing the teacher's explanation, Ahriman was relieved. If Blanca takes this magic weapon, it is equivalent to carrying the teacher with him. Blanca, go to the Luberon region first. After you go there, I will tell you the next plan. Okay, teacher, I'll leave now. After Blanca left, Ahriman looked at the direction where Blanca left reluctantly. Rudolph comforted him, Blanca will not be in any danger, but the Garan region is more dangerous, which is why I sent Blanca to Luberon. I understand, teacher. Ahriman turned and said, Teacher, I want to be promoted to a level 6 wizard. There are 10 level 6 mid-sky constellations, Equus, Canis Minor, Aquila, Ophiuchus, Serpens, Sextans, Hydra, Unicornus, Orion, Cetus. Rudolph thought for a while and said, Aquila is a wind constellation. The secret location of Aquila is at the southern end of the Vulture Mountains, which is safe now and not far from here. Go and come back quickly, Ahriman, you still have a lot of work to do. Ahriman took the secret formula and relics given by the teacher and flew to the sky. It's good to have a teacher. Not only does he have suitable relics, but he can also help him plan his growth path and provide suitable secret formulas.